Hey guys, this is Leaf. Today I thought I'd show you my dual Magicka Sorcerer build, and let's start out with the gear. So we got 5-piece Shacklebreaker, 5-piece Spinners, and then 2-piece Mighty Chuden. And I went with all Impen, and also all Max Magicka traits. And then on the jewelry, full Arcane with spell damage, and 1 Magicka Recovery. And then for the swords, we got Nirnhone on the front bar with a Shock Glyph, and then Sharpen on the back bar with an Oblivion enchant. And the reason for Sharpen on the back bar is because you could go Infuse, and it's actually going to be really similar damage, and in certain situations Infuse will be better. But Sharpen tends to be better for solo play. So basically the difference is that with Infuse, you would need to proc your enchant twice while you're trying to kill someone in order for it to be better than Sharpened. And that's really hard to do when you're solo because you're basically going to be shield stacking the whole time. So you're usually not going to be able to proc that second enchant before you have to go back to shield stacking. And so Sharpen is going to give you overall more damage because of that. But if you're in a group or you're in a situation where you can proc that second enchant, then Infuse is going to be better. So it's kind of like a choose what you want type of thing. And the reason we went with Shock here is because it's technically the highest damage potential we can get, especially because of some of our passives here, increase shock damage by 5%. And also it can proc the shock status effect, which puts minor vulnerability on your opponent, which increases their damage taken by 8%. And then Oblivion for the second enchant, just because it's really good. And then on the back bar, we got Black Rose Resto Staff. And honestly, you actually don't really need this. If you don't want that, you can just, do a Spinner Resto Staff. The only thing this really gives over this one is the one line of Magicka Recovery. The only reason why I tend to run this over just a Spinner's Resto Staff is because it's really good in group, being able to give your teammates major vitality. But if you're playing solo, then honestly, this is probably the better way to go, or just like a one-piece that gives Magicka Recovery, which is what this does, or like a one-piece that gives physical resist, or whatever you prefer. But if you do want to use this, then it's really good, especially because you get that Magicka Recovery line. And I would go Infused as the trait with weapon damage enchant. And that is it for the gear. So let's get to the stats real quick. So I am a high elf, and the reason for that is the max Magicka 10% is really good, 9% magic recovery really good, and then shock damage 4%. It's just good all around. I think it's the way to go right now, but that may change in the future. And then 44.5k max Magicka front bar. Back bar is going to be a little bit less, 41.9. And then we got 22.2k health, 12.5k stam, spell damage 2600, spell crit is 39%, but when we proc the exploitation passive, which this gives 6% crit now, it's going to go up a little bit higher to 45%. And then 19.3 spell, 17.5 physical, and that, keep in mind we have Chuden on, so that's why it's so high. Crit resist 3.2, and then magic recovery 1726, but on the back bar it's 1901. And then 818 health recovery, 861 stam recovery. And then for the skills, and then Clockwork Stitcher's Fillet as well, which increases max health, health recovery, max Magicka, and Magicka recovery. This is the best food for the sets we're running, in my opinion, because I personally don't think. I think this is enough stam sustain, and being able to get that extra magic recovery is really nice. So then for the skills, I'll start with back bar first. So we got Haunting Curse, and this is going to do a ton of damage. I've hit 13, 14Ks on weaker players. Against good players, you're probably going to hit anywhere from 6 to 10K, depending on their build. I guess probably an average damage dealer in Cyrodiil, you'll hit 8 to 12K. Maybe like 8 to 11K. Healing Ward, it's a pretty good skill, especially if you're in group and you can pass it to other people. It just really adds to that shield stack, and I tried playing without this, and it just wasn't enough. You just couldn't get a big enough shield stack when you're low health, and you just get so much execute damage. But now it does not heal you. So on the first, when you cast it, you don't get any heal. You have to wait until it expires to get the heal. So if you're in execute range, hopefully you can line of sight or do something to get your health back up. Otherwise, just beams and executes and that kind of thing are going to do a lot of damage to you. And if you are worried about that, you could try running something like Blessing and Protection, maybe. You could also try to get away with Rapid Regen, but I don't really recommend it because I don't think it's enough unless you're in a group and you have other healing support. You could also try potentially running like a Twilight, but then you'd have to double bar it, and I don't like doing that. And it would be more of a different build in that case if you did run Twilight. And then also I tried running Boundless Storm here and get heals off of Power Surge, and it's kind of good, but it's just inconsistent, and I don't think it's better than Healing Ward. But if you did want to run Boundless Storm, then you could put on something else other than Mighty Shootin', so maybe like Pirate Skeleton or Bloodspawn or Slime Craw or like a Max Magicka pieces or anything like that. And then Harness Magicka is the next skill, and this is still so strong. It's incredible how strong this skill is. With one Magicka guy fighting you in an outnumbered situation, you're almost never going to run out of Magicka. It's just insane how good the sustain is from it. And that's why I like Harness. And then Hardened, obviously, because, you know, bread and butter, Magicka Sorc, shield stacking build, you're going to want one Hardened Ward. And so that's 18.2 is the shield stack right now. And with a couple changes, you could get that higher if you prefer. It's just up to you. And the last skill, Power Surge, gives you major sorcery, which is pretty good, and also heals you when you deal critical damage. But another skill you could run instead is Structured Entropy. And this is also going to make your shield stack a little bit bigger, so 19.2. And it's going to give you a little bit more health as well. And in addition, it gives you this passive, Might of the Guild. So when you cast it, you get your next slide attack will do 40% extra damage, and that does buff Overload. And this is an Overload build, so if you wanted to, you could cast that and hold on to it for your next Overload. So you would cast it and you would hold your lights, and then on your next Overload you would let it fly, and it would do a lot of damage. Backbar ult is Overload, Energy Overload. And I like this morph because it gives Magicka back, but the other morph, it does increased damage when you're farther away from your target. I think it's 15%. So if you're a certain range from your target and you use the other morph, it'll do 15% more damage than this one. So if you're going for like a full damage build, then you might want to use the other morph. And then front bar, Endless Fury. This is kind of the spammable on this build, but it's also a great execute, and it gives you Magicka back, so it's pretty cool. Dark Conversion, and I really like this skill because it just helps you with your sustain, especially if you're fighting Stam. You might not be getting that Harness Magicka back, so it can really help your sustain. And also, they changed it. They adjusted it. It's not really a nerf. It's kind of a nerf, but basically it gives you less Magicka back instantly, but it gives you more over time. So it gives you 2400 over 20 seconds. And so if you just keep this buff up, cast it every 20 seconds, then your regen is going to be a lot higher, and you're going to notice you have even better sustain, as opposed to not casting it every 20 seconds. And then next we got Crystal Frag, pretty self-explanatory, and then we got Inner Light, so it increases your Magicka by 5% and gives you major crit, and this is really important. And if you didn't want to go staff, if you didn't want to go dual wield, then this is the only skill I can see that you could take off to put a staff ability on. I'll just use this one as an example. So you'd run this, and you'd run a staff skill here instead, and so you can get that 8%. Where is it? 8%. Right here. So you get 8% single target abilities. And this is a good idea if you don't want to run dual wield, but that Inner Light does add so much extra damage, and you're actually going to get more damage overall by staying with dual wield. And that's why I like dual wield. And then we got Streak. I really like this morph because it deals a lot of good damage, and I like being able to shield stack and then turn around and streak through everyone and stun them all. And then we got Summon Charge Atronach, and both morphs are good here, but I really like this one because the AoE damage is actually really, really good. So I prefer this morph, but both morphs are good. If you don't want to run that, I'd go Dawnbreaker Smiting, but it's not going to hit as hard as it used to. But as you can see, the tooltip's a little bit higher, 14.8 compared to 11.2 initial damage. And then also, if you don't want to run that, maybe you could run Negate if you're in a group, or you could even do Meteor as well. And honestly, you could put any front bar ult here, because you're mostly going to be using Overload, but I'm a big fan of Atro. And if you're in a group, the synergy is super good, especially if you're playing with a high damage player, and they get that 25% extra damage for 8 seconds. It's really good. Also, you can line of sight with this, so if you plop it down, then you can, stand inside of it, and it's harder to hit you. So, how exactly does this build work? Well, the combo is to kill someone. Basically, if you're truly outnumbered, then you're probably going to be shield stacking the whole time, right? And so you're going to want to go behind line of sight, shield stack, and then once you think you're ready to hit them, what you're going to do is you're going to do light attack curse, light attack overload bar swap, light attack endless fury, and then light attack and streak. And that's going to be the combo. If after that endless fury, if you're frag procs, then you could throw that instead of streaking. Or if you'd rather, you don't have to streak after the endless fury, you could just do another endless fury as well. It just depends on if you want to get that CC from streak or not. And also, if you do light attack endless fury and then light attack streak, and then you turn around and have a frag proc, well, they'll be stunned, and there's a higher chance it might hit them. And then you can do light attack frag. And basically, something to keep in mind is that when you go into overload, it costs 1 global cooldown, but if you go out, it doesn't. So if you saw there, I casted a shield when going out of endless fury, or out of overload. So overload, 1 global cooldown, and then see how the skill is lit up on the bottom there? Well, then if I go out, it becomes unlit, and I still can cast a shield in that same cooldown. So if you're going on the offense and you're going into endless fury, but then it doesn't really work out and you don't want to waste any more ults, then you can just go out and press a shield at the same time. And that way you can keep building your ults by light attacking with your rest of staff. Another thing you can do is, since it does cost a global cooldown, if you're really under pressure, then chances are it's going to be hard to be able to do a curse and an overload and an endless fury all at the same time without having to recast shields. So what you can do instead is you can go into overload and then hold your lights. So you won't be building ults, but if you hold your lights and then curse and then bar swap and do the combo, then you can skip that part of activating overload. Let's see if this guy attacks me. Yeah, I guess he does. Okay, well, I guess you can see it in action. Just got Troll King on. So Nightblades are actually kind of a little bit annoying on this build because it's so projectile based, so they can avoid a lot of your damage, which can be kind of frustrating, but you just got to play it well. Okay, so there we go. So as you can see, in actual combat situations, odds are your overloads aren't going to land every time. But when they do, when your overload does land, then the hand that you threw the overload, that enchant will proc. So if you throw it from your main hand, then the shock will proc. If you throw it from your offhand, then the oblivion will proc. Which is pretty nice because it adds a lot of damage onto the rotation. So let's say you land 2 overloads on someone, well that's a shock glyph and an oblivion glyph, on top of all the already super high damage. So it can be really strong. And most of the times when you're actually fighting in Cyrodiil, you're going to be using Overload to get your kills. And you can get it so fast. It's a really cool ult because you don't really need... When you go into it, you can use half of it and then you still have your ults. And then you can go back into it later. So if you know you're going to get into a big fight, you could potentially just save up all your ult, get to 500, and you have a ton of overloads, and you can just spam that. So that's pretty cool. Otherwise, let's get into CP real quick. And keep in mind, I also am using the Mage Mundustone. I should have mentioned that before. It just helps with bigger shields. And that's also the same reason why I'm going Arcane here. And for CP, so 48 Warlord, 8 Sprinter, 49 Mooncalf, 37 Tenacity, 75 Arcanist, 48 Tumbling, 5 Shadow Ward. And then 75 Ellie Expert, 81 Elfborn, 33 Spell Erosion, 81 Master at Arms. Then we got 56 Ironclad, 68 Resistant. Honestly, this might be a little bit too many points. You could probably bring this down and put them into a different tree. 72 Thick Skinned, 37 Hardy, 37 Ellie Defender. And I maybe would want to boost these a little bit. Otherwise, I think this is a pretty solid setup. Because you definitely want that stamp sustain from the green tree. And the blue tree, it's all about critical damage. And it's all about direct damage. So, when you have a crit at 45%, 46 right now, I guess I might be having outside enemy keep bonus. Gives 1% crit. So it's normally 45 in combat. And you're going to be critting really a lot. And basically the idea is that if you're not critting, then you're not going to kill someone. So you really should be critting people. And that's why you want to have that high crit. Some modifications to the build that might be worth considering are, if you want to go full damage, then I would switch out Shackle for maybe Spell Strategist. Let's see if I can grab a piece of that just to show. Yeah, here we go. So it's Max Mag, Spell Damage, and the 5-piece, when you deal damage with a light attack, you get that 483 spell damage against that target. So that's really high damage there. And that with Spinners, it's just going to blow people up. And another thing you can do is, if you're using Structured Entropy, there's another skill, the Psijic line, Imbue Weapon. And basically, if you're somehow able to fit both of these skills on your bar and use them in combat, so it's one of those things that's easier said than done, which is why I haven't really tried to do it. But I had a friend help me test, and basically what you can do is you can use Entropy and Imbue weapons to make your overload hit insanely hard. So basically, you know, you're in your shield stack, you Entropy up, and then you hold your lights, and then you do your normal rotation with Curse and Overload. And then when you throw that first overload, before it lands, you'd hit Imbue weapons. And so that means that the overload is going to be buffed by your Entropy for 40% from the Might of the Guild. Plus, you're going to be hitting your Imbue weapons at the same time as that overload landing. So it's going to do, just one overload will do so much damage. Plus it'll proc your glyph, and then your Curse and your Endless Fury will explode as well. So if you can somehow manage to pull that off in combat, then it's just going to, the damage is insane. But it's really hard to do, and that's why it's just not really realistic as a solo player to be able to pull all that off in one combo. Because keep in mind, you have to keep your shields up, and you have to keep shield stacking. Because this really isn't a tanky build. If you let your shields down, you're going to die. And so another trick you can do when you're on the offensive is if you keep your stam up, then on the offensive you can waste some of it. And the idea is that it's really, really hard to kill a good player or to kill people when you're outnumbered on Sorc and keep your shields up at the same time. It's basically impossible. So in order to get kills, you have to let your shields down. So if you're shield stacking and you go on the offensive, what I would do is between every skill, or not between every skill, but between every skill, between like, I don't know, like an Endless Fury, you'd want to throw a roll dodge in there. And that'll help reduce your damage taken, then your shields will stay up longer. And then when they start expiring, which is after 6 seconds, when it gets to that 6-second mark, I would just hold block. Either hold block or roll dodge. Because if you get hit by anything when your shields are down, then you're going to explode. So if you keep your stam up while you're on the defensive, then you can waste some of it on the offensive. And let's say you're at the very end of your combo, your curse already exploded, you're already endless feared and everything. The opponent is just about to die. You just need one more hit on him. Like I said, just hold block. And if you don't have the stam for it, then don't do it because you're going to die. You're going to run out of stamina and you're going to die. But if you have good stam management, then you can waste some of that. And another thing is, and that's why I like running tripods, which is what I'm currently running on this build. So it gives health, magicka, and stamina. So when you're on the offensive, let's say you're holding block, your shields are down, you're about to kill someone, you're at half health, half stam, well all of a sudden you hit a pod, and now you're almost back to full health, back to full stam, and you can just keep going. It's a really risky way to play, but it can get you some really good kills as well. And you could also, if you really wanted to not run tripods, you could take off entropy or power surge, whatever one you're using, and you could put a skill there. The skill that I'd really love to run on this build is mines, because it's going to do so much damage on this build. And then also, since you have major crit now from the pot, you could take off inner light, but you're still going to lose a little bit of max magicka. But you could put on Boundless Storm, and then you could switch and take off Mighty Shooting and put something else there. And if you want to go full damage, then I guess Slime Craw is kind of the way to go. Let's see if I have a piece on me. So that's going to put you at, you're almost going to be at 50% crit with Slime Craw. It's going to be at like 40, 45. Here, let me put Mage Knight back on. You're going to be sitting at, so 50.6% crit with Slime Craw. It's actually a little bit less because we have that 1%, or 2% right now. So it'd be 48.6%. If I did my math right, there might be another buff in here. But anyways, it's going to be close to 50. And you're going to have that 8% Major Berserk, which is really nice. And if you look, the tooltip on the frag is 16.8. I'm just going to put 2 max magickas on real quick to show you that I also really like that. So if you go Dami and Lambris, you also sit at a really high magicka value. Like, look at that, 47.8k magicka, and I don't even know if I'm in 511 right now. Light, heavy, light, medium, light. Okay, so I am in 511. So that's an insane magicka value. I'll just pop my food real quick. So 47.8, that's really high. Plus, you get 13.9k stam. So this is also a really good way to go, but I really don't know if it's better than running, you know, 2-piece Chuden or 2-piece Pirate Scally or any of those, 2-piece Bloodspawn. Basically, it's down to personal preference. So, to summarize, the most important thing about this build is the idea is that you can run dual wield and not miss out on staff light damage by running overload. So you can be a dual wield user and still have good light attacks from overload. And then the main thing to keep in mind is you really want to just follow the rotation of the offensive pressure rotation. But these sets are interchangeable. You could run Spell Strategist or you could run Julianos. Literally any set, any 2 magicka sets you can put together. This is just the combo that I like. So if you have something else in mind, go for it. And that's about it. So if you have any questions, let me know, and I hope this was a helpful guide, and thanks for watching.